Yeah, so without further ado, we just want to dive into some of the questions you guys have been texting. Also, feel free to text them in. Hopefully we can put the slide up from time to time to remind you of the phone number. I'll be getting updates right now of questions and be asking them throughout the seminar. So yeah, Chad and Andrew. This is Andrew, by the way. He's the drummer.
I had to rope somebody in to come up here with me.
The first question, everyone wants to know kind of what was the beginning of King's Kaleidoscope? Where did you guys come from? Where did you personally come from?
Yeah, well, first off, I just got to say, I was telling Colton backstage, we do Q&As a lot on tour, like we do kind of a little VIP thing ahead of time, but it's usually like 15, 20 people. So I was like, oh yeah, no problem, just do whatever, I don't care what the questions are. And then I walked in here, I was like, oh boy, should have got ready for this. I can start personally, I guess. I'm from Seattle, Washington, born and raised there, grew up there my whole life. I grew up in the church, and my parents were always really involved, especially with music. So I've kind of come up in that world. And I've also come up in faith through that, kind of a legacy in my family of that. So music was always a thing for me. I was always playing in church and kind of doing stuff on the side. I DJ'd a lot growing up, and so there's a large hip-hop influence in my life. And I met Andrew in high school. He was in the other band that was way better than my high school band, and they would always put us to shame when we played shows together. No, they were amazing. And yeah, and so basically after high school, I was strongly considering full-time ministry, and I'd been thinking about it for a while, leading worship a lot at the church I was at, and decided to do an internship with a church in Seattle called Mars Hill Church. A lot of you guys probably heard about it. And we planted a church on the University of Washington campus. So we had a big lecture hall, and we met every Sunday night, and I sort of came in as the intern, just arranging songs and doing worship there. And King's Kaleidoscope started out of that, basically. Eventually we played a Good Friday service, and we sort of had this record, which is now called Sin. It's a live Good Friday record from a long time ago. And that was when we had to actually come up with a name. We have this project. We don't just want to call it Chad Gardner. What should we call it? And we had a lot of bad band names on the docket. And yeah, what was that again?
Mice Gun was one of them.
What else?
Let's see, Jambulance, Gospel Copter. Predestiny's Child.
Predestiny's Child. I was going to say more, but that was the best one. We can't top that. So that's kind of how the band started, was out of a church plant. And we did that for 5 years or something? I don't know. I worked there for a while. Many of you guys have heard the story of that church, but it fell apart. And my wife and I left before it totally fell apart. And really, it's been 3 years now, I think, that Kings sort of is just an independent band where we left that. We still wanted to play music together, and we had a history of doing all this gospel music together and with spiritual themes, and we just wanted to keep making music. So on our first record, it has it's like a mixtape. It's a blend of songs we were leading for worship, some new songs, and then with the last record, we've just been sort of starting to be a band and write and travel and play. So this is, as I said earlier, if you were in the last session, this is really refreshing for us because we're on tour playing just a lot of our own new music. And so coming here and getting to sing worship songs that we don't get to sing a lot anymore is a big deal for our band. It's a lot of fun for us, and it's just a joy. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. This next question is for both of you. So we're getting you involved in this one. What does your process look like for composing music, for doing renditions of hymns? What does that creative process look like for you guys?
I guess I'll start. Mostly, I'd say at this point, we used to try and back when we had 10 to 11 people at any given time in the band, we would try to all write music at the same time in the same room, and that was just a nightmare. It was for me it was, because it was a lot of very strong voices, all competing over whose idea was better. So we kind of just defaulted to, hey Chad, how about you just write some skeletons and then we'll fill them in. So with these last couple records, we've been doing a lot of one-on-one I guess, composition. Like, I'll go over to his house and we'll work on drums for like a solid 5 or 6 hours, and then Zach will come over and do bass. And at least musically, compositionally, we found it works better just to have like a direct like line of communication with each other instead of this like nightmare of people, you know?
Yeah, and lyrics actually, I've always hated writing lyrics and been terrified of it. So on our first record, Becoming Who We Are, I mean, at that point, I legitimately didn't think I could even write songs, which is crazy because I ended up writing a fair amount. But so I started off cutting my teeth at that, doing a lot of co-writes, specifically with my good buddy Brian, who has a band called The Sing Team, and Zach, who has a band called Citizens and Saints. And we continue to do that a lot. The last record I wrote a lot with Zach, and I'm getting better at it, but I would just get on basically, my phone and just be texting him all day long and just back and forth with what my ideas were. And it's been really cool. It's been really challenging, and I feel like God's granted me a lot of growth in that area because I've always struggled with how do I say something in a way that feels like it's my voice, and songwriting takes a long time to develop that. So, and when you come from just arranging hymns and church music, it's a really different thing to say, I have an idea, or I'm passionate about something, or I have a story I want to tell and I want to put it into a song. It's a completely different, I think, even skill that you have to grow at versus, arranging In Christ Alone or something like that.
Yeah. We're going to dive now into some content and the question we've probably gotten the most, which is about everyone's new favorite song of prayer.
Their favorite word, obviously.
The favorite word. We're diving into it. This question is more first encouraging you guys. It says, thank you for writing a prayer. It impacted me greatly. I appreciate your rawness. But what was the writing process behind that song, and specifically the decision to use the F word, to use it, say it no other way?
Yeah, totally. So, you asked me the longest question first, which is my story. And a couple pieces to that I could feed into that is I've had a lifelong struggle with pretty severe anxiety disorder, various forms, panic attacks, different kinds of things. Since I was really a toddler, like my parents have stories of me experiencing panic attacks when I was like 2 years old, which is kind of rare. And I've had all the different kinds of doctors and tests and MRIs and different medications and therapies or diets, like all that stuff. And it's a continual thing for me. And right now I'm really thankful I've been in a really good season. But coming out of working at Mars Hill Church was extremely hard for my wife and I. We had a season where we both quit our jobs. So we went from double income to zero income because we both worked for the church. We lost our church community. The day after she quit, we found out her dad was diagnosed with stage 4 brain cancer, and he passed away 10 weeks later. Then we got pregnant and lost our son to a stillbirth. And then we lost 2 other family members, and it keeps going on. It was terrible. My wife got in a car accident, and we had all the stress of a falling apart church and a really complicated situation there. So that compounded me into a season of really, really just hard times. These guys know, they travel with me. I mean, anxiety was keeping me from like traveling. I literally couldn't get on planes, or if I did, I was like seriously knocking myself out with melatonin. Like even last year to come here, because it was still part of that whole thing. Like it meant a lot just for me to just even take a 2-hour flight. So just for context, that's sort of some of the makeup of my flesh that I deal with on this earth. And so that also is where God comes and really shows up in my life and reveals himself to me. And it's how my faith has been strengthened and challenged over and over again. So there's tons of ways that happens. But the Song of Prayer is me, just wrestling with all of that. So feeling like God is far away towards the tail end of all of this stuff compounding for a couple of years, and just being completely done and exhausted with, all right, I get on these waves of I'm going to really try hard to, whatever it could be with anxiety, pray every morning, go to CrossFit so I can like get the serotonin rush and feel healthy, take my meds, like da-da-da-da, and then at night just feel like I'm gonna die. And that's real for some people, and I think the thing with that song is that's just me explaining it. It's just, I don't feel like I wrote it. It didn't take edits. It was me just kind of sitting there and coming off the top of my head and singing a couple takes for those first two verses, and they just were there. And it was kind of like, wow, that's really powerful. The music to that song had been around for a long time, and it was actually the "Will I Fall or Will I Misstep" was like going to be a pop song. And when we were writing the record, it was like, oh, that melody's great. We can turn that into a song. And every time I tried to touch it, I just couldn't get anywhere with it. And then all of a sudden, really late one night, I sang it to a totally different tempo and vibe, and that's what happened with it. And it was so intense that I just had to kind of sit with that for a while. What does this mean? This is a prayer. This is super vulnerable. What do I do with this? And I knew I needed a second piece, and it took a couple days and a lot of prayer, and then it just like hit me. I think it really was just inspiration from the Holy Spirit of God speaking directly to my fear and to where my fallenness was, and speaking his love and his presence and truth to me. When I sang that, it was super intense as well. I could only do like 3 takes of it, and I was just like wrecked. So then we were left with this song that had these 2 pieces. This deep pain and gut-wrenching thing of where I am as a human that is not yet in heaven and fully restored, but knows God, and then God speaking to me as his son. And it's a testimony song is what it is. So we had this big decision of, do we alter the testimony or the art to basically appease one type of Christianity, Western, modern, American Christian culture that really, as a band even, is just an industry. And I just could not, it did not sit well with me. We talked to, our pastor about it. He was like, what do you mean? Just do it. It sounds like a psalm. And a bunch of other people, it's like, he's a Presbyterian, like they go to a conservative church and a PCA church. And and just other friends I know who are theologians and stuff. And at the end of the day, the only reason to not release that version of the song with the F word in it, where I'm just being how I would be if I was sitting on the couch saying how I really was feeling in that moment to any one of you, right? Which is sharing a testimony. And the only reason I wouldn't have released it is for money, like at the end of the day, or some kind of a reputation. And at the end of the day, that's not something I really want to be a part of. So that song, since then, is our #1 stream song we've ever put out, because it's a real testimony and it impacts people. We got flown to New Zealand to play at a festival because the director of the festival just couldn't the song was overwhelming to him. He was sharing it with a bunch of people. So, we get kicked out of a festival in the U.S. to go play a festival in New Zealand. I'm like, fine with me. That works. So it is a heavy thing, and the other thing is I respect people's different theology on language and what it means and all of that. So at the same time, and families and stuff. So at the same time, we decided to I released, an edited version of the song, which we altered so that we could have both available. Because either way, it's impactful, but it just felt like the right thing to do, to put it out there as is. And thus far, even our conceived, like, how much flack are we going to get for this, has been less than we anticipated, and the encouragement has been like really overwhelming to the band.
Man, let's give him a round of applause for that honesty. Yeah, I know. I've talked to so many people here at the school that song has changed their life, because it's real. So thank you so much. And I'm sure everyone in this room, at least most of us in this room, feel that type of way towards you guys as well. Man, yeah. Thank you for your honesty and being real with us. This is kind of bouncing off that, and this is going to be more of an advice. So when you went through those seasons of anxiety and doubt, how did that affect your willingness and ability to lead worship, to perform songs about God, and kind of what was helpful, what was comforting? How'd you get out of that?
Man, that's a tough question. I think that I kind of so every week at our church we take communion, and most weeks, probably 90% of the weeks, I go to Revelation 19 and just read about Jesus being the rider on the white horse, and it almost always brings me to tears. And it's just this picture of this is how real God is and how huge and massive and glorious He is. And I kind of go through Revelation a little bit, and I think that's what it is it's. Like we travel, and a lot of nights when we're on the road, we have some hymns, and we're playing a bunch of other songs that are wild and whatever, all our new stuff. And so there's definitely like really worshipful aspects where we feel like we're getting a whole bunch of people to worship together. And in those moments, if I'm just feeling tired on the road or whatever, it still feels like I am wanting to look at Christ and worship Him even when I don't feel it. And I feel like just even knowing that about myself and doing it anyways is still worship, where I'm acknowledging that, God, you're God. I'm looking at you like I look at you every Sunday when I take communion, and regardless of how I feel right now, I'm going to sing this because it's true. I don't have to feel it, but it's true. So there's a line that is in our last record, Beyond Control, that's, I'm holding on to feelings in between. The faith I want is bound in apathy. I'm tired of doubt and feeling incomplete. Still, this hope I hold is my reality. And that is a little bit of a way that I would sum that up, which is like, regardless of your feeling, you're holding hope, and that is the realest thing that you can have, is the hope of Christ. That is reality. And after that, I just sing reality, and it's kind of this, what is he singing about? And I feel that so deeply, that's what hope is hope is more real than your other feeling, your doubt or your anxiety.
Switching gears a little bit, and continue to text questions in. I'm still getting a lot. You can feel free to ask follow-up questions as well if there's a question that sparks some interest in you. So bringing Drew back into this.
Yes.
The question we have, this is a lot for artists in the room, but for the ordinary person as well. How can you reach the secular art world if your art is labeled Christian art? Is it better to avoid that label?
Man, yeah, is there even an answer for that? So my philosophy on that is when I started playing music, I started out as a drummer and then started playing guitar and all that, and I was really into a lot of hip hop and punk and very underground music. And I think the thing that always drew my attention towards that was just it's like singing about what you believe in just a way that's there's not a preconceived idea of how to do it. It's just I believe this, and so let's play really loud and really fast and to sing about it, and that's one thing I always, even from high school, playing with Chad in all our high school bands or whatever, is he's very direct and very extreme in a lot of ways, radical, but no, and so for me, with Kings especially, I think we always kind of default by saying we're a gospel band, because there is a very real Christian music industry, and that's kind of been hard for me, I think, over the years to be I don't want to really be a part of this, but I don't want to be really cynical and just avoid it altogether, because obviously there's a lot of people who we've met who are incredible and have really been huge blessings to us. So I think for me, I just kind of ignore the label. I don't think I'm actively trying to work against it, but I think as far as secular versus Christian, all of us have probably been brought to tears by music that isn't Christian music, right? And so it's what is Christian music? Is it does it exist? There's Christians who play music, and I think that's kind of the belief that I've always held. And so for us, we play a lot of like also just like venues and bars when we tour, and just kind of like weirdo places, and it doesn't feel like different than when we're like leading worship here, and that's like a different like mindset for like congregational singing and stuff, but I just kind of don't really think about it that much, really. Yeah. So I don't know if you have a bit to add, but
yeah, I don't have. I just think that the label thing is. I think it's really helpful if you're like on Spotify and you're, you want to know if you want to hit up a jazz playlist or a metal playlist. So I think artists that really whine about labels and like, I don't want to be put in a box. It's like, dude, come on. Like,
we're gonna be in a box.
Everything you've listened to is folk music your whole life, and you play folk music. Like, get over it. You have a label, and it's really helpful for people who are trying to find what you are. And I think it's helpful for people to know, oh, this music is about faith, like straight off the bat, and that's because we've just come out of that, and it's the kind of songwriters we are, and I have no problem with that. I think we've basically boycotted the Christian music industry with a prayer at this point. So
definitely did.
Like Lifeway won't stock any of our CDs. They haven't for a year now. So you can't even. They don't even sell us in the Christian bookstore. It's true.
I was actually at a bar for the first concert I went to of you guys. I didn't drink, though, because of contract and everything. So
Nice.
yeah, I didn't feel the spirit as much that night.
Nice. Hey, can I tell you a quick story?
Of course.
We were playing at this really cool, like, legend venue in New York City. It sounds way cooler than it was because we weren't playing on the main stage. We were playing on, like, the middle one. It's not quite as big. Kind of cool. And they were, like, so awesome to us. They obviously knew we were this Christian band. And they had a drink special for the night. I guess they make a different drink special every night. And I don't know if they like make a pun for every band, but wasn't it How Deep the Father's Love? And it was $12, like for the 12 disciples. I think that's what it was.
They were reaching like really, really deep for like Christian references for that one.
Yeah,
for sure.
Some Bloody Marys as well.
Yeah, it was incredible. I wonder if anybody bought it. Yeah, Bloody Marys.
Runs dry, yeah. The well drink that never runs dry.
Andrew just said the well drink that never runs dry, by the way.
All right. Speaking of secular stuff, this question's kind of a mouthful. How can secular artists, i.e. Chance the Rapper, be praised for singing about Jesus, but Christian artists receive backlash for singing secular songs? It seems like Christians overestimate the faith of non-believing artists and underestimate the faith of Christian artists. So 2 questions come from that. First, can we sing worship songs that come from the same music album as secular music? And 2, how do we address this double standard? Feel free to go in on this one.
Wow, that's complicated. I don't even know if I understand it. Can you read it again? No, you don't have to read it again.
That's a lot to read.
Okay. I would guess that the person that asked this question has a just different theology than me on a lot of different, maybe not a lot of different things, but just on what art actually is.
What a heretic.
No, not that way. Just like, I just mean like a worldview of, I look at art and I see human expression, like almost period. Okay, so like that's what it's for. It's for sharing the human experience together. So when secular artists release records that resonate with tons of people, it's because they're really, really, really convincing and good and God-gifted artists that are reflecting God and the struggle of humanity to everybody else. It's like God made them that way. They're good at it. So we should all appreciate God's handiwork in that person, which is why we love all kinds of art, because we love all the artists that make it.
Especially Kanye.
Yeah, especially Kanye. I think he's incredible. So, I mean, yeah, obviously. So what was the end of that question?
How do we dress, I don't know, because this kind of goes, if your theology is different, how do we, we'll go back.
Yeah, that's question one.
Question 1. Good call, Kevin. This is why Kevin is here. He sends me the questions. You're actually texting him, so if you want to send him a note, you can do that right now. First question, can we sing worship songs that come from the same album as secular music?
Is somebody just asking about like blessings or something like that? Probably from Chance's record.
Yeah. How great is our God?
So how great is our God is a Chris Tomlin song. If everybody knows that, and then Chance the Rapper did a cover of it. So I honestly don't even think about that stuff. I mean, we just sang All Glory Be to Christ, which is to the tune of Auld Lang Syne, which is not a Christian song. And there's tons of hymns that have been done to bard tunes like hundreds of years ago. So, yeah, I think I don't know, I would just say, like, graciously, I just think that this type of thinking is just drawing lines in the sand where there doesn't need any lines drawn in the sand. It's a sad form of religion that just doesn't need to be there. Like, God looks at all the art and he sees the pain and he sees the sin, but he also loves the sinner. And there's beauty, it's broken beauty, but there's still beauty in it because it's still reflecting him even if it's broken. So that's why all of this is inspired by Kanye West, who is a sinner like me and who needs God's grace like me, but he's the most influential artist in my life as far as an artist that God created in his image. And he makes art that doesn't glorify God most of the time, but he still glorifies God by making art, which is still what he was meant to do. So that's my answer, I guess.
Yeah, guys, continue to text in questions. They're still coming in. Here's kind of a question about witnessing. It's great, working with the theme
Sweet.
here. Yeah. How do you think Christians in the visual arts, film, television, animation, etc., can have a better presence and glorify God and their profession? How can they be a witness in the art industry?
That's a good question. I think it's really nuanced depending on what you're doing. And I should give Andrew some time to talk. But I would say in general, I think nuance is a big thing because I don't like, once again, well, this question isn't asking that, but I think just naturally as human beings, we want to say, like, how do I do this? And the reality is you are a different person than this person and in a different life circumstance. You come from a different place. You're going to a different place. And it's going to look different for all of us in a lot of different ways. And the thing that's really cool about that is that actually takes a lot of faith in God that he's going to guide you with the Holy Spirit. And you can come up with a lot of different answers for stuff like that, or buy into some sort of a theology or a philosophy that has rules that you really agree with about secular art or how we're going to be a witness with that or whatever. But I think it's really nuanced. So, for example, King's Kaleidoscope sings blatantly, scriptural-based songs, and that's our witness. But Andrew plays in a metal band, and his witness is just being Andrew in that band, and that's still a witness for him. And I don't think one of those is better. I don't think God is more pleased with King's Kaleidoscope for leading worship at Biola than he is with Andrew for playing in his metal band. And I really, truly, I believe that. Because if that was the case, God would be more pleased with, something like us leading worship than somebody coaching a volleyball team, after school on Wednesdays or whatever. And that's not the case. And I know it's talking about art, but I don't know. I think it's just different for everybody. I don't know the visual art world very well, unfortunately.
What do you think, Drew? Got him.
I mean, just piggybacking off what Chad said, I think, this past year for me has also been, trying to figure out, just different things in my life and in my marriage and all this stuff, how we want to do it, how do I want to do it, what does God say about it, and I think there's a lot of, boxes I realize I put myself in that, I just don't even need to be there, and I've always believed it my whole life, and it's a very physical reaction, but I've always man, if I record a song, I'm not gonna share it with anybody, I'm not gonna put it on SoundCloud or whatever, and I've been trying to just break out of that, and just little simple things, but with art, it's if you can watch YouTube and look at your mentors and look at the people who inspire you and take from that, but in reality when it comes to art and the gospel, I don't see how you can just be like, that person did that, so I'm just going to do exactly that, and that's going to work because they're not you and you're not them. Yeah. And so I think that's when just doing like what you truly believe has been given to you is like the only thing you can really do.
Okay, I'm gonna just add one little thing, because I realized the question was a lot about witnessing, and I think that really that's, when it comes to like, say art is your vocation or your passion, I think the way that you witness with that has a lot more to do with your own personal just love of God, and that isn't, it's just natural at that point. Like it'll flow into every part. It'd be like saying, how do you witness through just being a person, like in your regular life? It's not just gonna hit, just art. It's gonna hit every aspect of your life. It's actually a bigger thing to take on. It's like, I'm going to give my life to God in every way and devote time and energy to spend with him because I love him and I want to know that he loves me in a deeper way. That is how you'd actually probably end up witnessing through art, because you'd be, like we kind of are hinting at, you'd be hearing from God all the nuances of what he wants you to do, and it's going to be different for all of us.
Thanks, guys. This is even touching on that, falling off of that. How important is motivation in creating music, especially worship music? Do you have to have the right motivation, or is it wrong to almost want to build your label and your brand?
So this is probably talking about, like, I don't know. The first thing that came to my mind is like the only thing that motivates me is deadlines. So if I don't have a deadline, nothing gets done. I've never had a pure motive for anything I've created in my life. It has always been split. Always. Like, I mean, probably. It feels like. I don't think any of us ever are just like, I have 100% pure motive, and it's gonna stay that way for more than 10 minutes, or like one afternoon where like God, struck me with lightning, and it's like the next day you're like, oh, mixed again, or you're, trying to accomplish something for a selfish reason. So that's not really an answer, but that's sort of how I feel about it. I think that God is gracious enough and his redemptive power is enough that he's working through all of our brokenness all the time. So, yeah, I mean, King's Kaleidoscope makes decisions completely just based off of a drum beat or a bass guitar, and we're not thinking at all about, like, is this a witness to somebody, or how does this... But in that moment, I do believe we're actually glorifying God by, once again, doing what he made us to do, which is think about kick drums and hi-hats and snare drums and guitar tones and stuff like that, because we're just being excellent, and we're imaging him in our craft, which is glorifying to him.
Well, I feel like every time we've tried to, like, at least for me in the band, whenever we've tried to, like, have this, like, 100% pure motive, like, the ideas just kind of suck. Like, it's kind of like, like it's like whenever it's been like, we're gonna like, and for me, when I've like been like, all right, this drum part's gonna be like so slamming, and like I'm gonna be like, just like, yeah, on fire, yeah, and then it's just like, okay, that just feels so wrong. Like, this does not feel right. And then it's like 2 a.m. and like you're like recording a voice memo, like beatboxing it, sending it to Chad, and like, that's the one that makes it. And in that moment, I'm just like, man, I'm really tired and this is sick. Chad needs to hear it,
None of that is like, how are we gonna? I don't know, man. We're bad missionaries.
Why do we invite you guys to this conference?
Yeah, what am I doing here?
Switching gears one more time. Where is King's Kaleidoscope headed? Where are they going? What's next for you guys?
Man, if you guys could see this one PDF document I have on my iPhone right now, you'd flip out. There's some crazy stuff coming down the road.
No more swear words, though.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not my job. It's not what, yeah. So we're working on a lot of new music and a lot of new really cool collaboration stuff with. I want to say merch, but it's almost like fashion stuff. It's really crazy. That's why I was saying PDF document, because we just got this thing sent to us the other day that's like stuff we're gonna wear for a tour, and it's just like wild. And Andrew's gonna potentially be wearing orange short overalls and a bucket hat. They're like, that's so dumb. What do you guys think? It'll be cool, I promise you. So yeah, we're making a lot of stuff. We're just creating and, just being super, super open with all of it and trying to be, I don't know. I think fearless is always a thing. I get a lot of thrills by just anytime somebody says something is cheesy or dumb, like making it not, or anytime somebody says that's, I like to like push the envelope musically. So lots of new music, lots of collaborations with other artists, like visual artists, which is cool because we haven't done that before. And at one point we were going to be, this is literally like 2 days ago. We don't know what we're doing anymore. We were going to be doing a like straight up hip hop mixtape as a band in the fall, or not the fall, but the spring. At this point we might just like take some of the songs and do a full length record like a little bit after that. So we don't know. Be on the lookout for more music. But there's a good amount of rap floating around. Oh, and lastly, I've been doing a lot of production for a new friend, Andy Mineo, and so that'll be on his record. Yeah.
Some Mineo fans.
Yeah, we do.
This question's it's a big theology question here. We got a theologian here that's texting in.
Dang it.
Hey, you can be theologians, just not missionaries. Yeah. In Philippians 4, Paul calls us to keep our minds on whatever is pure and admirable. How should we react to music that promotes themes that are contrary to God? For example, certain lyrics that can be degrading to women. So what do you guys do with that? Because obviously you've talked about how art is art, and art is beautiful. But what happens if
good question.
That art is almost degrading or not glorifying to God?
Well, I would say that the way that I intake art is not passive. So if I'm listening to Kanye West and he's got some just terrible misogynistic lyrics and stuff, there's actually usually a threshold where I just feel uncomfortable and I can't listen to it for even like maybe just once or something like that. But at the same time, I'm listening to it actively just as an artist, trying to glean for why is this guy such a genius? How did God make this guy so smart with what he's doing? Why does he communicate so strongly? What's inspiring about his confidence? Whatever that is. So I'm definitely rejecting parts of art that I'm, absorbing and really like actively thinking and processing other parts of it. So I don't think that it's I don't think that it's an all or nothing. And I think that there's certainly some things where you're just like not gonna like, porn, and just not gonna like try to glean something from that because there's no beneficial thing from that. And I think that there is sometimes music like that, or there's just, just like thresholds, I think. So I could listen to College Dropout way more than the Yeezus album or Life of Pablo just because of the lyrical content. But I still wanted to listen to all of it because I believe there's value in it as an artist listening to other art. That's kind of my answer to that. That's how I approach it. Same.
He was done after the overalls comment.
Yeah.
Been publicly shamed.
Right.
How do you take care of yourself when you're always performing, spiritually and physically?
That's a great question. You want to hit it?
You can go first.
Okay. Spiritually, I try to have some sort of, honestly, I was saying about anxiety. So for the last couple of years, just traveling and being on tour has been so brutally hard for me emotionally and spiritually, that it was like I was operating out of a great need, which is, I think, God's grace in a lot of ways. There wasn't an opportunity for me to kind of coast, if that makes sense. So now I'm getting more into a place where I'm feeling good, I'm feeling healthy, and the temptation for me is to coast, where it's like, oh, wow, I haven't read my Bible in days or, prayed in days now. Like, what's going on? So that's more of the temptation now. And whereas the temptation on the other side would be like doubting God's faithfulness and the fact that I'm safe and loved in his care. So that's always a balancing act. It really helps that everybody in the band, we're like brothers and we really take care of each other, and we're all really vulnerable with each other. We pray for each other. So that is also really helps on the spiritual side. It feels kind of like a little church, even in a sense. And then physically, just smoothies every day and green juice. I basically like hold off on trying to eat, crap until like after the last. Like once we get to the end of the show, and the end of the tour, then I just like go nuts. I'm just like, where's the milkshakes and stuff? Right. Like Milky Buns. We just like waiting to get Milky Buns.
After's ice cream.
Yeah.
It's a place to get it.
After's ice cream. You guys don't know what that is. Okay, it's this thing you guys have down here we don't have in Seattle, which is imagine like a Krispy Kreme donut, but it's like there's no hole in the middle, and they just inject it with ice cream, and then they warm it up. Yeah, it's incredible. So that's not taking care of my body, but I wait till the tour's over.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me, physically, kind of the same thing. It's like, I know the King's set, like our tour set, is like a pretty demanding drum set for me. So it's a lot of like stretching, a lot of like brisk walks, a lot of brisk walk. A brisk walk is like on a railroad track. This is a brisk walk. So yeah, it's a lot of like we used to do like weirdo jumping jacks and push-ups before shows to get ourselves hype, and I don't know. It's like physically, it's more about like, for me, it's like accountability. Like I kind of announce, I'm like, you guys, like I am not going to eat bread, and it's like, and like Blake will always be like, all right, man, like, like your call. Spiritually though, definitely the biggest thing is just the unit, our band. Since we kind of pared down and now we only tour with 6 people. Actually, there's a story last year from Biola. Speaking of spiritual health, so last year it was our first year playing here, and we kind of arrived and we just didn't really know what to expect, and we were meeting Colton and Haley and all the other team members, and we were just like, okay, this is really cool. And up at that point, like we had, like Mars Hill thing was kind of falling apart, and a lot of us, like I know I was like, I just moved back from Oakland, California, and moved back to Seattle, and yeah, I was like really just cynical. I was very jaded. I got here and like I was just a giant piece of poop, honestly. Just like people were doing great, awesome, nice things for me here, and like. I know it wasn't just me, but like in my mind I was like, oh, just like kind of treating it like, oh, this is just some conference, and it's like, oh, like this is like it's whatever. And Blake actually came up and he confronted all of us, and we kind of had this mindset for a while, the last couple of shows, where we were just really cynical and just kind of like cracking just like kind of hurtful jokes, and he was just like, guys, like, what are we doing? Like, this is really distracting, and also it's like these people, like you, like Biola, is like going out of their way to like take care of us, and they're really like they believe like what they are talking about and what God is doing, and they they believe in each other and like the whole the team, and we just like that was a milestone for us as a band. Like after that night, it was like we got to take care of each other, not just in like accountability for like physical or like praying before we play or whatever, but like the overall like vibe we present towards other people. And we were just really, I know I was like just really struck with like, man, like God has like given us all these people, and we're just kind of throwing it all away mentally. And so that was like the start of, I think, our current vibe of just really considering each other family. And it's not like the blood, but it's the family that God has given us.
Great job, Biola. You did it. Yeah. Who would have thought? Oh, man. That's sweet. We've loved having you guys back, and we want you back every year, but we know that may not be possible, especially if you're hip-hop then. I don't even know what we'll do.
Yeah, I don't either.
All right.
I'm not rapping if we do that, by the way, just so you guys know. Like, we have a lot of other rappers. But, I mean, it wouldn't be cool.
So you're not saying you're not going to
I'm
rap?
not a rapper. It would be dumb. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. How has your guys' theology impacted your music, especially with songs like Felix Culpa? They're just so rich in theology. How has your guys' as a band's theology really impacted how you do music, how you write music?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it's a good question for Felix Culpa. So I have a really good friend who's also kind of a spiritual mentor for me, and he's one of those guys who's a theology nut. I think he just literally 2 days ago got his doctorate in something. I can't even keep track of all the schools he's going to and stuff like that. And he's a writer. And we worked together at Mars Hill, and he would just come in my office and just kind of go nuts on my whiteboard. And I am not a theology, as you can tell, I'm kind of a scatterbrained, emotional kind of dude. And so I would just be like trying to absorb as much as I could possibly try to get out of him. So he would just come into my whiteboard and just be like, show me what he was thinking about, and, you know, just writing down stuff or diagramming stuff. And then he showed me the idea of Felix Culpa, and it like kind of blew my mind of being able to see sin as, you know, however great it is, seeing that God's grace is greater. And the whole idea, Felix Culpa means a fortunate fall, or oh happy fault, where you look at your shortcomings and you just see God's grace. That's how much he loves me. It just flips it, which blew my mind. So then we had the task of like, how in the world do you explain that in a song? And yeah, I don't know how we figured it out. That one took a while. It was a team. Once again, Brian, that guy he produced a lot of that stuff for Mars Hill Church back in the day. He helped me with some of the lyrics. Cam, there's a band called The Ghost Ship. He actually, this is wild, the whole bridge of that song, we were chopping it up, talking about that song one afternoon with Brian, me, and him. And he went back that night, and he had a nightmare. He couldn't sleep. He woke up in the middle of the night just like terrified from thinking about, we had been talking about this person that's just realizing how sinful they are and how awful when you actually think about what sin is and just like the pile of it. As we were kind of vibing on that, and he went home that night, he couldn't sleep, he had a nightmare, he wrote the bridge of that song. So the whole thing that's, and still I'm a wicked, wretched man, I do everything I hate, all of that he wrote, and he was just like, I don't know what to do with this, guys, but I just woke up with this. And then Brian and I were able to kind of wrap it around to the, like, it's just grace upon grace upon grace upon grace. However tall that list of things you can think of is, or that weigh you down. So, I don't know, man. A team process. That's how theology plays in. It's really community oriented.
Well, yeah, guys, if you want to hear that song, stay tuned. It may be tonight. We don't know. It's a surprise.
He wants us to play all these crazy songs. I'm like, dude, are people going to sing along? But we want to do them, so.
Maybe a prayer, too. We don't know. Thursday night, come out.
We'll do it. Teaser.
Here's a question about authenticity. We'll probably take one or two more after this one.
Cool.
So get them in. Last second questions. In a culture obsessed with authenticity, how does the church respond in the way it creates art? Yes. I've heard that vulnerability... Don't jump the gun here.
Question.
It's longer. I've heard that vulnerability is the best answer, but I'm beginning to think that perhaps sincerity could be better. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, sincerity or vulnerability, like, I don't know how to really navigate those two terms and what they would mean to different people, but I would say that it's probably been trendy for a while now in just, you know, young Christian culture to be really authentic and really vulnerable, just as it is in all of the world. So people having, you know, there's less of a shame-based culture with a lot of stuff, and there's more of like people can just be really honest, which is really healthy. I think the thing that's missing is people being honest about their joy and being honest about their hope. Those things are still actually like, I think in a lot of ways from my vantage point, like not cool. So it's very like, we have friends that have this podcast called the Bad Christian Podcast. Some of you guys might have listened to it, but they do a lot of that stuff where it's really vulnerable, and it's like talking about brokenness. And I'm not saying they do a bad job, because they also talk about other stuff, but stuff like that has come up a lot, and it's really cool. But like, the most vulnerable thing to me in the world, or sincere thing to me in the world right now, is like somebody who's been walking with the Lord for a long time, or even is like a brand new Christian, and they just exude joy. Like, that is so countercultural, and I even think that's countercultural to maybe a Christian trend of we're all just so jacked up and we're so raw about it, you know? I don't know. That's just a thought I've been having about that recently.
Going back to Chance, that's kind of what he's doing.
Yeah, so Chance the Rapper is doing that for sure, like where he's sort of like been coming to faith in his own way, and he's like being just straight up joyful about it on record, which is really, that's why it's so refreshing, is because I think that's missing from culture and art, period. You know, we're like waiting for Kendrick Lamar to give us a record where he like has some answers, because he's just been defining the problem for the last two, and it's like, that's just all of art right now.
Sweet. This will probably be our last question. This is for both of you guys. What is your favorite worship song to perform, and what song that you wrote do you like performing the most? And I think that's the same question. They just said it 2 times in 2 different ways. So,
yeah.
What's your favorite song to perform?
Because
whoever that question was, good job.
Can you read the first part again?
Okay, I'll read the first part again.
Worship song.
Yeah.
What's your favorite worship song to perform?
Okay.
So maybe you know.
Versus original, like.
Yeah. It's just. So worship song would be the song like that is pretty much for church or something like that.
And like the originals would be like.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's all worship. You guys know that, right? I'm just kidding. Let's see. I know what yours is.
Really?
I think. I don't know. I'm thinking. So
Let's say it at the same time. 3,
hold
2.
on. Okay, that's a good idea. Well, hold on. Let me think about my favorite. So this is for like what we would like a church song. We, you know.
Okay.
Gosh, I don't even know. I don't have a favorite. Yours is How Deep, for sure. Yeah. Mine might be In Christ Alone. Yeah. All right, other song. Move on.
Favorite song that we wrote to perform?
Right now, it's probably one of the ones I don't have to play guitar on. Dust.
Oh, it's Dust. Easy.
Oh, for you too?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So Dust is the favorite one to perform. I get to play a shaker the whole time. It's really ridiculous.
I just played like George of the Jungle the whole time.
Yeah, he said George of the Jungle the whole time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Biola University prepares Christians to think biblically about everything, from science to business to education and the arts. Learn more at biola.edu.